Good afternoon to you. Mark Sott with HurricaneTrack.com. It is Monday, the 25th day of April 2022, and you have tuned into our off-season edition of the Hurricane Outlook and Discussion. Severe weather season is still the season that we are in. I guess it could be severe weather season any month of the year, depending on the dynamics, but it's almost time. Once we get into early May, we will switch the branding over and the look of everything to hurricane season mode. We are getting closer. I'm going to talk about that a little bit in the first part of today's update, a few hurricane season related topics, and then we will check out lower 48 weather and any threats of severe weather that might be coming up, including a look at fire weather and the dangers associated with that. I saw an interesting tweet that started me thinking a little bit. We need to emphasize that a little bit more, this fire weather phenomenon. So I'm going to show you that, and then a couple of odds and ends things, and then we're done. All right, so let's get on with it, shall we? First of all, take a look at this. The La Nina has definitely made a comeback. The CFS was on top of this for months and months. We looked at that going back to December, and there it is. Look at those cold anomalies right there off of South America. My goodness, the Galapagos turtles over here in the islands and those iguanas and everything else that lives there. I don't know if they like the colder than average water or not. I'm not a naturalist or a biologist by trade, but I would have to think that when you're looking at, look at that. That's purple in there. You go down here to the legend, that's at least 4 degrees Celsius colder than the long-term average. Any animals down there, marine animals, land animals that go into the water, you're going to notice that. And the point is, this La Nina has definitely strengthened again here in the equatorial Pacific. Meanwhile, a little bit of warming has started again in the tropical Atlantic. The trades have begun to slow just a little bit as the pattern over the North Atlantic is changing, and there's been a lot of talk about this. I've seen on Twitter back and forth between different people about the main development region and how much it warms up as we get into the hurricane season, that area could really hold the key as to whether or not we have a truly hyperactive season with several long-track violent hurricanes like we saw in 2017. That warm area, what we call the main development region, pretty much this area between Africa and the islands, is a big focus of that. If that becomes warmer than average and pretty much in robust style like we saw especially in 2017, then it could be a very, very busy and impactful season. We don't know yet. There's different modeling that's suggesting that the trades could stay weaker than average out this way, further warming this in the coming weeks. So that's what we got the map for. We take a look at it at least once a week, and there it is. The players and the puzzle pieces, whatever metaphor you want to use, they are all seeming to line up for a very busy season ahead. And as I alluded to, the Nino 3.4 region has gone down in recent months. And, this goes all the way back to 2021. You can see the progression. The trend line has certainly been negative, down below the neutral area, which is right there. And we are currently in a La Nina state. And the ensemble members, the mean, they're all suggesting we stay in La Nina with maybe a rebound towards at least neutral by the time we get into early 2023. But we've got, in this time period, right through here roughly, quite a busy hurricane season, maybe spilling into October too. Got to get through this period, which is the heart of hurricane season, and the CFS, among most of the other dynamic and statistical models, suggesting, pretty much it's spelled out for us, we're going to have a La Nina going forward. And this is the area that we really are focusing on. Just want to remind you of this. We got this neat graphic here that our graphics guru, Tim Melman, put together for us, our own custom INSO map. There it is. That's the area we're talking about, the Nino 3.4 area. I'm drawing a big box around it. It's this area that's hatched that we really pay attention to, and that is definitely colder than average right now. As I showed you, all of this area is. So the setup is there for a busy season, and different agencies, private, public, university, you name it, are predicting a significant season ahead. This is very recent here from NC State in my home state of North Carolina up in Raleigh. They're predicting, their researchers predicting a very busy season. I've actually met with Dr. Che here, Dr. Leon Che, way back in the late 90s, I think it was. 99 or 2000, somewhere around there. I actually met Lee and Shay, did an interview with him up at NC State. Probably wouldn't remember me. I was in the early stages of my career. But look, they're talking 17 to 21 named storms total, and maybe 7 to 9 of them become hurricanes, and the possibility of 3 to 5 of those, the overall package of everything, 3 to 5 of them becoming major hurricanes. That's your category 3s or higher. And it's those major hurricanes, the intense major hurricanes, Cat 3s, 4s, and 5s, that do most of the damage that we see historically. That being said, we never ever want to discount tropical storms, Cat 1s and 2s. They can come with their own sets of major impacts, and we're going to talk about impacts a little bit before we wrap things up today. So NC State projecting a very busy season. I'll put a link to this in the description of today's update if you'd like to read it and some of their thought processes. It's not in depth here. This is just more of a press release, but you can read about it. I'll put a link in the description. Now, this is interesting. Over at Storm 2K, one of our website supporters, Storm 2K is a message board and website, been around many, many years. I became a member of it, I believe, back in 2003, and they're one of our Patreon supporters, and we appreciate that very, very much. And there's a lot of really smart and in tune people. They're the people that are in tune with what's going on. You know what I mean? They're engaged, and they have their finger on the pulse of what's happening, especially for hurricane seasons. And then anything, really, there's different forums there for winter weather, severe weather, you name it. But we're focused on hurricanes mostly. And I thought this was an interesting thread, or part of the thread here on the overall, the main thread is the expert forecasts for the 2022 North Atlantic hurricane season. And as you can see, there's a lot of different topics being covered. But this was really interesting to me. How does the drought play in? And if you were to get a big fat ridge of high pressure, as an example, we'll use, I guess black should stick out pretty good. So let's say you got a lot of drought and heat over here in the plains, and you develop a big old ridge sitting over here during the summer. Wouldn't that keep a lot of activity away from the Gulf Coast? That's kind of how this particular response here started. Different theories on why the steering patterns set up the way they are. And this is what started it. This was Weatherman 57, and he was saying, he was talking to Dr. Klotzbach. New data is even more bullish on seasonal activity, etc. We'll see what Phil says later. But my point here is that one thing to look for, he said think, but it's thing, is the continued drought in Texas and Louisiana. If that continues into July, it could be good for people here. This Weatherman 57 is in Houston. I know this person personally. I will keep their true IRL identity quiet, because they want it that way. But this is a meteorologist, I will say that. But what he's saying is that, hey, the drought could help portend perhaps a lot of ridging sitting over here that would keep hurricanes away from the Gulf Coast. And that's a valid thought, okay? That's not absurd. And then you can look at the different drought updates here, and this person here, the professor, I don't know who that is personally. They're in Wichita, Kansas. Oh, by the way, when they're blue, they are a professional meteorologist. So they go on to say, I wouldn't be so quick to shut the door in Texas and Louisiana. I do agree that the drought will play a part in this season, but it's not just Texas and Louisiana that will play a part. Let's look at 2011 versus the current drought, etc. And you remember, folks, 2011, Texas had basically like this Texas air layer, kind of like the Saharan air layer. And you remember dawn that was going in here near Corpus, and it just died and like literally became nothing. It just turned to dust, seemingly. Well, that's kind of part and parcel to what this professor person is talking about. So that's 2011's drought monitor. What about 2022? And instead of reading all of this and dragging this out, I'll just summarize it for you. This year, the drought is much more prevalent all over the West. So it would stand to reason, the professor here, and this poster goes on to say, that we would have a big fat ridge in the mid to upper levels, big upper level high, the steering levels parked out west with the mean trough kind of like this, not necessarily that deep, and that opens the door to Texas and Louisiana. All right. Not all the time, but it certainly doesn't scream isolated regional drought like we saw in 2011, where this did tend to protect the Gulf. And of course, we had Irene that year that ran the East Coast. Just interesting what people look at and how they try to figure out the steering patterns coming up. I will also post a link to that thread, that topic, on today's video update discussion on YouTube as well, so that you can read it and maybe make sense of it a little more yourself. I think that's really interesting. We know from looking at everything it's going to be a busy season. I think that's almost a given. Nothing in weather is guaranteed until it's actually happening, so it's all based on probability. But where are what forms going to go? Does that make sense? Where are they going to end up? You know, that's the key question there, and we don't know the answer to that. Not, definitively, but these things might offer some clues. All right? So be sure to check that out. I'll post the link in the video discussion. Okay, moving along. Water temperatures off the Mid-Atlantic and East Coast. Hey, look at that. Some 26 Celsius little islands starting to show up there. That's roughly 80 degrees, getting close to it. The gradient is strongest right here, meaning the difference in temperature over distance, and everything's warming up. So we're losing the steep temperature gradient. Beach water temperatures getting into the upper 60s here, close to 70 for the Carolinas, and even warmer, of course, farther south. Not so warm still up in the Mid-Atlantic and New England. That's expected. Just wait till Memorial Day, about a month away, and things will start looking better for you folks, I promise. Gulf Coast, it takes a little longer for whatever reason, even though these waters are shallower, than the open Gulf, the shelf water. It just takes longer for them to warm up. And poking up into there already, that's 27 Celsius right there, real close, just south of Pensacola. And this is 26 Celsius, this area. So the Gulf continues to warm up very steadily, as you would expect. Nothing too unusual about it. This is all the 80-degree line right here, 80 Fahrenheit, 26 Celsius, just kind of roughly outlining it for you. So it's getting there. And then your really shallow coastal areas around Texas here, up to Galveston Bay, in and around the shelf waters, and just off of the bayous and the Atchafalaya River Basin. That'll warm up pretty quickly as well. And by the time we get to a month from now, the Gulf will be ready to go. It's always warm enough for intense hurricanes. It's just a matter of how warm relative to average and where those warm areas are when you get a hurricane coming. And at least so far, we don't see any hurricanes coming. My goodness, though, look at that gigantic, huge cyclonic storm system. Now, that is very important because the Atlantic is not dominated by a huge area of high pressure sitting over the Atlantic, which is clockwise. So if it was a big high sitting over the whole tropical Atlantic like this, and subtropical Atlantic, the North Atlantic, that's what we'll call it, you'd have trades just blowing on through here like mad, and the waters would get stirred up, evaporational cooling, dust coming off Africa, you name it, and you would cool the main development region through that process. That is not happening because, look, you got a big old cyclonic storm here, no high pressure in the mid and upper levels, a massive continental-sized swirl there. My goodness, that's nuts, isn't it? And so you're not roaring the trades through here. The trades have been slowed because basically the North Atlantic Oscillation is headed towards negative if it's not already. Should have pulled that chart up. I didn't. I apologize. But this is the look that you look for generally. And when you see this, you know the trades are going to be lighter down here, and we're going to warm up the MDR slowly but surely. Front coming in, some severe weather. We'll take a look at that in a moment. But no impulses to worry about down here. Should use white so it pops a little better. Strong upper level winds. Of course, these are in the upper levels there, those wispy clouds. But just a few scattered, low level plumes of clouds with a couple of thunderstorms here and there. There's a little bit in the Caribbean, not far from the Caymans, but nothing organized. It's still just a little bit too early. No signs of the Central American gyre showing up just yet either. Our vorticity chart here shows that nice and quiet here in the deep tropics, as you'd expect for the end of April. But look at all that energy in the North Atlantic there. That's that one cyclonic storm. That's the other one over here. When you see all this out here, the trades down here are going to slow, and you're going to warm up the main development region. There's some energy coming in through the Midwest and down through parts of Texas and Louisiana, Arkansas, and we'll look at that on the severe weather side of things. Let's move on into it. Marginal risk today. Come on. Really? There we go. Come on, Internet. Right through the green area. So, kind of a lower end overall severe weather day, which is good considering the time of year we are in. That doesn't mean no risk. It's just marginal. It's the lower end of the threat level for severe weather across that darker green area for you. So, keep an eye on things, but nothing too outrageous or threatening. A few thunderstorms in South Florida down here, and then likewise up in parts of Idaho, getting close to the Pacific Northwest, just a little disturbance moving in. And just for fun, not fun, but you know what I mean. Look at that, the highest tornado risk in the lee of the lakes. Who would have saw that coming? Not me. Interesting. Normally we look at that area for lake effect snow. 2% though, so that's not too bad. The wind threat only 5%. The hail threat very low in Texas. So again, all in all, not a major severe weather day today. What about tomorrow? Well, it moves into my neck of the woods tomorrow. Everything else is just your garden variety thunderstorm outlook, if you want to call it that. I mean, again, nothing too menacing. And then by day 3, some activity coming up into the Central Plains, peninsula of Florida, and then just a lone area, a little island of potential convection in Wyoming and Idaho. Beyond that time frame, though, days 4, 5, wait for it, 6, 7, and 8, the day 5 popped something. So let's look at that. This will be towards the weekend, right in the heart of the alley. So all the chasers that go out there, save up your gas money for the week ahead. You're going to need it. This will probably go up, so pay attention to this. You live out there, you already know, you're aware of it. But, we're in the heart of severe weather season. It's growing more and more each day climatologically. This area all throughout this region will be favored, and it won't be too long, maybe even next week. Not this week, but next week, I might be heading out there with a couple of my colleagues to start setting up some equipment, maybe do a preliminary. We'll just see. We'll let the weather dictate what we do, but we definitely want to get out there with some of our hurricane equipment, do some testing. Good to kind of do a dress rehearsal under operational conditions of some severe weather, but also put that tech to use in a severe weather setting. More details on that when we get there. We don't want to focus too much on it right now because I want to get this video done today and post it online for you guys, but it's coming. We're going to be heading out there pretty soon. Now, one thing, as I teased, fire weather is severe weather. All right, this tweet coming from Elizabeth Lightman. I think that's how you would say that last name. Who is that? Well, it says it right here. Meteorologist at the National Weather Service, Storm Prediction Center. So I think we should pay attention to what Ms. Lightman says, don't you? I think so. And so you'll see that name, Lightman, at the end of those forecasts, right? It'll say Forecaster Lightman on the SPC outlooks. In fact, let's see if they are there, just to prove the point. Go back to, hold on, I want to do this. Let's see. Lightman, are you on there? Gleason is this one, day 2. I'm just trying to prove my point here. Lightman may have already been off. I think she worked over it. Oh, there it is. See? Makes me not a liar. Just wanted to prove the point. That's who Elizabeth Lightman is. And to that point, this is very serious. All right? That's what I wanted to show you. And this plays into what I was talking about with the severe, the severe drought that they're experiencing and the upcoming hurricane season. See, everything's related. Right now, they need the rain out there desperately, and fire weather is severe weather, and the extreme, those pinks there, the frequency of them in the SPC Day 1 fire outlook is just ridiculous, very active, as the original post here from Collins suggests. See, all these little extreme events, that shouldn't be happening. That shows you the extent of this drought. But, as Elizabeth says here, the high plains need the rain. But if you get the rain, you start to change the upper air pattern potentially as we get into the hurricane season. So all of these things are interconnected and somewhat related. So we'll be watching this for the obvious, the fire weather being severe weather, and does the drought get eased a little bit? As talked about here in this thread, everything's related. It's like the circle of life for the weather world, all right? So speaking of severe weather, real quick, what do we got? This is the GFS 12Z run today, 500 millibars, because we can see the sort of the pattern, the waviness of the weather. You know, when the weather's wavy, it's busy. When it's flat, it's tame. That's just a very simple rule of thumb. So we move, if this will let me, move this out. There's some impulses coming in. You see that over the next few days to more than a week out. Nothing alarming with like a giant trough digging in, you know, right in Tornado Alley per se, but enough of these impulses, these cold air, upper level lows, energy, vorticity, whatever you want to call it. And this is only one ingredient. This is what I look at. There's moisture return, dew points, humidity, lift, all that stuff. You know, I worry about that later. I just want to know, is the pattern going to be there? And for today, that's where the pattern is through here, generally, and I showed you that on the SPC Outlook. As that progresses, you see that. And then the next few days, towards the weekend, that's the energy that comes in that gives us the day 4, or I'm sorry, it was day 5, soon to be day 4, risk in the heart of the alley. So that, again, there it is, Saturday, right? That's the weekend. And then next week, a little bit more energy comes in, Pacific Northwest, this one digging in through the Rockies, little impulse there. I might want to head out there with a couple of my colleagues, as I talked about. So stay tuned. We shall see. That's fully a week out. We've got our eyes on it. We can do some interesting things out there, I think, using our technology. Now, what about the tropics? Almost done here. This is lower in the atmosphere, and if you've been watching these videos in any past hurricane season, you know that this is my go-to level of the atmosphere. 850 millibars. That's about 5,000 feet up. And this is the east coast, southeast coast of the U.S. there, Central America and South America, right? And this shows us vorticity, spin. Does anything through here or elsewhere come together that's not stretched out vorticity like that and bundle itself, suggesting a tropical cyclone? That's what we look for. So quickly scroll through. You see these little streamers and pieces of energy that go by to the north and the south, but, you know, literally over the next 2 weeks, I'll show you the whole thing. There's nothing. You know, you don't even see a big wind shift over here. These wind barbs, those are your trades down at, I think, what is that, 10-meter wind or something like that? Yeah, the wind, 10-meter cyclonic vorticity and wind. So those winds are 5,000 feet as well. Sorry. It's been a while since I looked at this. So the winds at about 5,000 feet. Don't change direction too terribly much through the trades down here. See, they kind of come in and they're going along, and they're generally from east to west. When we see over here that they change and we get this sort of gyre set up in and around Central America, that's when we start to get suspicious. Do we see that? No, we don't. Everything's general. There's a little attempt there, just, you know, way down out into the future by about 10 days plus. See that? Just a little bit of a perturbation in the wind field, but nothing alarming. But we're getting closer, is my point, to hurricane season. And I think in the month of May, because we've seen it the last several years, we will get a development before June 1st. I would say the way things have gone and the setup that we're seeing with the favorability of everything, you can almost count on our first named storm happening in the month of May. And that brings me to this. You ready? It's here. Very happy about it. This gives you a sense of scale. The 2022 paper tracking map. Kind of hides me, doesn't it? I print those. I designed that back in 1999. That's how I started my career. That's a whole other story. But this is literally my map. That is my piece of artwork. I built it in Adobe Illustrator a long, long time ago. Printed these by the hundreds of thousands each year for Lowe's and TV stations and radio stations. We'd give them away all around the Southeast. Today, I print them by about 200 to 300 a year, and we give them to our patrons on Patreon at a couple of our levels. It's included. So if you want to get on Patreon, excuse me, get on Patreon, you get one at the $25 level or higher. All right. And some of our $10 people that have been with us for a long time, come on, they deserve one too. But if you want to buy one just outright, I will sell them, of course, and I'll put a link to that in the description of today's video as well. It is 20 by 28. You get a Sharpie. You see how it's a little shiny? So it's on like a glossy, but a Sharpie works really, really well on these things. And what is this right here? See that at the bottom? That Swift? What is that? We're going to talk about that more in a future update. I want to talk about impacts not related to the Saffir-Simpson scale. We will discuss categories when a hurricane is a certain category, and we're going to leave it at that. That's just for the Saffir-Simpson hurricane damage potential. The impacts are a totally different thing, and our community on Patreon and on Discord, we all kind of came up with this acronym of SWIFT. Surge, wind, inland flooding, that's the IF, and tornadoes. SWIFT, your four main hazards. Surge, wind, inland flooding, and tornadoes. I wanted to introduce it to you today. Those icons on there, it's on the map. If you order a map, you'll see it. We talk about it a little bit. We must think impacts and not worry so much about the category or the wind speed. I know it matters, but the impacts, what's going to impact you? That's what we're going to focus on. All right, so it's an educational tool. If you want to get one, I will put a link in the description of the video today. I'll tweet about it over the coming weeks. We'll probably sell 40 or 50 of them outright, and all the rest will go to our fine folks supporting our project over on Patreon. All right? Speaking of Patreon, get the app. Go to patreon.com/HurricaneTrack. Join up today. Become a part of what we're doing. You can support it financially as well as with your ideas. It's a great community. We are on Discord, and of course, and that's a great social media tool, by the way, just for our patrons. And then outside of that, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, those are our primary areas. And don't forget, hit that like button on YouTube. Help the algorithms boost our videos, get more people to know what we're doing, and we'll grow and get better at what we do, and in turn, hopefully, help you, educate you, get you involved, get you engaged, and excited about learning about the weather. And then we take you out there. That's one thing that differentiates what we do over a lot of these YouTube weather enthusiasts or experts, and there's plenty of them, some better than others, but we literally take you out there if you don't know by now, and it is quite an adventure, and we're almost there. We're getting ready to start doing that pretty soon. All right, speaking of pretty soon, let's get this online for you. All right, thanks as always for tuning in. I am Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com. I'll talk to you again early next week.